In a small town in Ohio, life moved at its own unhurried pace. The morning started with the sun rising gently over rows of modest houses, painting golden streaks across cracked sidewalks and quiet streets. People greeted each other warmly as they went about their routines, some heading to work, others tending to gardens or walking their dogs. Among these residents lived Maya, a bright 15-year-old girl whose smile could light up even the gloomiest days. But beneath her cheerful exterior lay challenges that most people couldn't fully understand. Maya had cerebral palsy, a condition that made it hard for her to walk without assistance. She used a walker to get around, but that didn't stop her from doing what she loved most, creating art and listening to music. Her room was filled with colorful paintings, sketches, and posters of her favorite musicians. Despite the difficulties she faced daily, Maya never let her condition define her. Instead, she saw it as just another part of who she was, a strong, creative, and determined young woman. Her father, Marcus, worked as an FBI agent stationed nearby. He spent most of his days chasing leads, interviewing suspects, or sitting through long meetings. But no matter how busy he was, Marcus always made time for Maya. Their bond was unshakable. On weekends, they would bake cookies together, watch movies, or take short walks around the neighborhood. Marcus admired his daughter's resilience and often told her, "You're braver than anyone I know." To him, Maya wasn't just his child. She was his inspiration. One crisp autumn afternoon, Maya finished her classes at school and decided to walk home with her best friend, Sarah. They laughed and chatted along the way, sharing stories about their day. As they approached a busy intersection near the park, Maya paused to adjust her walker. Crossing the street was always a bit tricky for her, especially when cars zoomed by without slowing down. Sarah stood close by, ready to help if needed, but before Maya could step off the curb, a loud voice startled them both. "Hey, what are you doing? You're holding up traffic." It was Officer Greg Dawson, a local cop known for his gruff demeanor and quick temper. Dawson had been patrolling the area when he noticed Maya hesitating at the crosswalk. Instead of offering assistance, he marched toward her with an irritated scowl on his face. "Come on, move it," he barked, waving his arms impatiently. Sarah stepped forward, trying to explain. I'm talking to her, not you," Dawson interrupted sharply, glaring at Maya. Maya felt her heart race. She tried to steady herself, gripping the handles of her walker tightly. "I'm sorry," she stammered. "I'll go faster." But Dawson wasn't satisfied. Without warning, he grabbed her arm roughly, yanking her forward. The sudden movement threw Maya off balance, and she stumbled, falling awkwardly onto the pavement. Pain shot through her body as her elbow hit the ground. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she bit her lip, refusing to cry out loud. Sarah rushed to her side, helping her sit up. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger and fear. Dawson stood there, arms crossed, looking down at them. "Next time, don't block the road," he snapped before turning away and climbing back into his patrol car. Witnesses who had seen the incident unfold were shocked. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others pulled out their phones to record what had happened. One elderly woman approached Maya and Sarah, offering a kind word. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Someone will make sure this doesn't happen again." By the time Maya finally made it home, her arm was bruised and her spirits were crushed. She avoided telling her father about the incident at first, not wanting to upset him, but Marcus could tell something was wrong the moment he walked through the door. Maya sat on the couch, cradling her injured arm and staring blankly at the wall. "What happened?" Marcus asked, concern etched on his face. At first, Maya hesitated, but under her father's gentle urging, she recounted everything. The fall, the pain, and Dawson's cruel words. As she spoke, tears streamed down her cheeks. Marcus listened silently, his jaw tightening with every detail. By the time she finished, his hands were clenched into fists, though he forced himself to remain calm for Maya's sake. "It's going to be okay," he promised, pulling her into a tight hug. "No one should ever treat you like that. We're going to fix this." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Images of Maya's tear-streaked face kept replaying in his mind. He knew Officer Dawson's actions weren't just careless. They were malicious. And as much as he wanted to confront the man directly, Marcus understood that solving this problem required more than anger. It required strategy. The next morning, Marcus filed a formal complaint with the local police department. He expected resistance, but nothing prepared him for the dismissive response he received. "It's protocol," one officer said with a shrug. "Our guys have discretion in situations like this." Discretion? Marcus thought bitterly. Was throwing a disabled teenager to the ground considered discretion? Frustrated but undeterred, Marcus turned to his resources. Using his FBI credentials, he accessed surveillance footage from cameras near the scene of the incident. The video captured every moment: the aggressive tone, the rough handling, the fall. Armed with undeniable evidence, Marcus contacted a trusted journalist and shared the story. Within hours, social media platforms erupted with outrage. Hashtags like "More Justice for Maya" began trending nationwide, drawing attention to the injustice Maya had endured. Back at home, Maya watched the news coverage with mixed emotions. On one hand, she felt relieved that people cared. On the other hand, she hated being the center of attention. "I just want things to go back to normal," she whispered to her father. Marcus nodded, understanding her feelings. "I know, sweetheart, but sometimes we have to fight for normalcy, and I promise you we'll get through this together." As the days passed, the pressure mounted on the local police department. Calls for accountability grew louder, and Marcus became a symbol of parental justice. Little did anyone know, this was only the beginning of a much larger battle, one that would test not only Marcus's resolve, but also the integrity of the entire system. The days following the incident felt like a whirlwind for Marcus and Maya. While Maya tried to focus on her schoolwork and art, Marcus threw himself into seeking justice. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he refused to let it break him. Every morning, as the sun rose over their quiet neighborhood, Marcus sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, reviewing documents and planning his next steps. He knew that fighting against someone in authority, especially a police officer, wouldn't be easy. But Marcus wasn't just any father. He was an FBI agent trained to handle complex situations. This time, however, the stakes were deeply personal. Marcus began by filing a formal complaint with the local police department. He walked into the station early one morning, carrying copies of the surveillance footage he had obtained. His presence alone commanded respect, but the reception he received was far from welcoming. Behind closed doors, officers exchanged uneasy glances as Marcus explained what had happened to Maya. They listened politely, at least outwardly, but their responses quickly revealed their true sentiments. "It's protocol," one officer said dismissively, leaning back in his chair. "Our guys have discretion in how they handle situations." "Discretion?" Marcus repeated, his voice calm but laced with disbelief. "Do you call throwing a disabled teenager to the ground discretion? That man caused my daughter physical harm and emotional trauma, and you're telling me it's justified because of protocol?" The room fell silent. No one dared to meet his gaze. Marcus could see the cracks forming in their defense. Still, they weren't ready to admit fault. Instead, they promised to look into it and sent him away without any concrete assurances. Frustrated but not defeated, Marcus decided to escalate matters. He reached out to a journalist named Rachel Monroe, whom he had worked with on previous cases. Rachel was known for her investigative skills and unwavering commitment to exposing corruption. When Marcus called her, she agreed to meet him at a small cafe near the edge of town. Over steaming cups of tea, Marcus laid out the details of the case. He showed Rachel the surveillance footage, pointing out every moment where Dawson's actions crossed the line. Rachel watched intently, her expression growing darker with each passing second. By the end of the video, she shook her head in disbelief. "This is horrifying," she said softly. "How can anyone justify this kind of behavior?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Marcus replied. "But the department isn't taking it seriously. They're brushing it under the rug. If we don't do something, nothing will change." Rachel nodded firmly. "You've got my word. I'll make sure this story gets out there." People need to know what happened. True to her promise, Rachel published an article detailing the incident within 2 days. The piece included quotes from witnesses, excerpts from Marcus's statement, and stills from the surveillance footage. Within hours, the story went viral. Social media platforms lit up with outrage as hashtags like #Justice for Maya trended nationwide. People shared memes, wrote op-eds, and organized online petitions demanding accountability. Even national news outlets picked up the story, turning what had started as a local issue into a national conversation about police misconduct and systemic discrimination. Back in Ohio, Officer Greg Dawson became the face of controversy. Reporters camped outside his house, eager to capture his reaction. When he finally emerged, flanked by his attorney, Dawson appeared unapologetic. During interviews, he claimed that Maya had been obstructing traffic and insisted that his actions were necessary to maintain order. "I did what I thought was best in that situation," Dawson stated during a press conference. "People don't realize how hard it is to keep the streets safe. Sometimes tough decisions have to be made." His words only fueled the fire. Critics slammed him for victim blaming, while disability rights advocates condemned his lack of empathy. Meanwhile, Marcus remained focused. He knew that public pressure was essential, but it wouldn't be enough on its own. To truly hold Dawson accountable, Marcus needed evidence and allies. One evening, as Marcus scrolled through social media, he came across a post from a woman named Lisa Carter. She described a similar encounter with Dawson years ago when she had been using a wheelchair after recovering from surgery. According to Lisa, Dawson had mocked her for being slow and even issued her a ticket for parking too close to a crosswalk, a claim she vehemently denied. Intrigued, Marcus reached out to Lisa and arranged to meet her at a local diner. Over coffee, Lisa recounted her experience in detail, tears welling up in her eyes as she relived the humiliation. Her story resonated deeply with Marcus, reinforcing his belief that Dawson's behavior wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a pattern, one that needed to be exposed. Encouraged by Lisa's bravery, Marcus began reaching out to others who had interacted with Dawson or other officers in the department. Slowly but surely, a disturbing picture emerged. Several individuals with disabilities reported feeling targeted or mistreated by law enforcement. Some had been verbally harassed, while others had faced physical intimidation. Armed with these accounts, Marcus approached advocacy groups dedicated to protecting the rights of disabled individuals. One organization, called United Voices for Equality, UVE, offered to partner with him. Together, they drafted a proposal calling for an independent review of the police department's policies and practices. The document highlighted not only Dawson's actions but also broader issues such as inadequate training, implicit bias, and lack of accountability. As momentum built, Marcus found himself thrust into the spotlight. News anchors interviewed him, activists praised him, and strangers thanked him for standing up against injustice. Yet despite the accolades, Marcus never lost sight of why he was doing this. For Maya. One night, as they sat together watching TV, Maya turned to her father. "Do you think all this is worth it?" she asked hesitantly. "I mean, it feels like everyone is talking about me now." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I know it's overwhelming, sweetheart, but look at what's happening. Because of your courage, people are starting to talk about things they've ignored for too long. You're helping make the world a better place, not just for yourself, but for everyone who's ever felt powerless." Maya smiled faintly, though doubt lingered in her eyes. She appreciated her father's optimism, but she couldn't shake the fear that things might not work out. What if Dawson got away with it? What if nothing changed? Marcus saw the uncertainty in her expression and squeezed her hand gently. "We'll keep fighting until we win," he said firmly. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you. Always remember that." Meanwhile, the mounting pressure took its toll on Dawson. For weeks, he had avoided addressing the backlash directly, relying on his attorney to handle the media frenzy. But as calls for his resignation grew louder, Dawson realized he couldn't stay silent forever. In a desperate attempt to salvage his reputation, he appeared on a popular morning show to defend himself. "I'm not a bad guy," Dawson insisted, looking straight into the camera. "I've served this community for over a decade. Sure, I might come off as strict sometimes, but that's because I care about keeping people safe. Folks like Marcus, he's just blowing this out of proportion because he thinks he's above the law." Dawson's comments backfired spectacularly. Viewers were quick to point out his hypocrisy, noting how he shifted blame onto Marcus instead of acknowledging his own wrongdoing. Disability rights organizations condemned his remarks, calling them tone-deaf and insulting. Even some of his fellow officers distanced themselves from him, fearing guilt by association. Behind the scenes, federal authorities took notice. Thanks to Marcus's efforts, the FBI launched an internal investigation into the local police department. Agents descended upon the town, interviewing witnesses, reviewing records, and gathering evidence. Their arrival sent shockwaves through the ranks, leaving many officers, including Dawson, on edge. For the first time since the incident, Dawson looked genuinely nervous. He began avoiding public appearances and stopped answering calls from reporters. Rumors swirled that he was considering retirement, though no official announcement was made. Marcus, meanwhile, continued pushing forward. With UVE's support, he organized a community meeting to discuss systemic reform. Dozens of residents attended, eager to share their experiences and ideas. The atmosphere was tense yet hopeful, as people voiced concerns they had long suppressed. "Eddie?" One point, Maya stood up to speak. Her hands trembled as she gripped the microphone, but her voice rang clear and steady. "I didn't ask for any of this," she began, pausing to collect herself. "I just wanted to live my life without being afraid. But now I realize that staying silent doesn't help anyone. If we want things to change, we have to stand up, even when it's hard." Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. Applause erupted, filling the space with warmth and solidarity. For the first time in weeks, Maya felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could create a future where no one else would suffer like she had. As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus approached Maya and wrapped her in a tight embrace. "You did great," he whispered. "This is just the beginning, sweetheart. Together, we're going to make sure no one forgets your name or your courage." And so the fight continued, though challenges lay ahead. As the investigation into Officer Greg Dawson and the local police department intensified, Marcus felt a mix of emotions: hope, frustration, and determination. Each day brought new revelations, some promising and others disheartening. But one thing was certain: the tide was beginning to turn. What had started as a personal fight for justice for Maya had grown into something much bigger, a movement demanding systemic change. Federal agents arrived in town with an air of authority that sent ripples through the community. Their presence signaled that this wasn't just another complaint against a rogue cop, it was now a federal matter. For weeks they conducted interviews, reviewed documents, and analyzed data. Officers who had once brushed off concerns about misconduct found themselves under scrutiny. Even those not directly involved in Dawson's case were uneasy, knowing that years of unchecked behavior might finally catch up to them. Marcus played a crucial role in assisting the investigation. His experience as an FBI agent gave him unique insights into navigating bureaucratic hurdles and gathering evidence. He worked closely with federal agents, sharing what he knew while ensuring Maya's story remained at the forefront. At the same time, he collaborated with United Voices for Equality, UVE, to push for broader reforms. Together, they drafted proposals aimed at improving training programs, implementing stricter oversight, and fostering better relationships between law enforcement and marginalized communities. While Marcus focused on policy changes, Maya continued to inspire those around her. Her speech at the community meeting had struck a chord, sparking conversations across the nation. People began sharing their own stories of mistreatment by police, many involving individuals with disabilities. Advocacy groups amplified these voices, creating a groundswell of support for reform. Social media campaigns gained traction, urging lawmakers to take action. But despite the growing momentum, resistance remained strong. Some officers, and even a few residents defended Dawson, claiming he was being unfairly targeted. He was just doing his job, they argued. Others dismissed the calls for reform as unnecessary or overly dramatic. These reactions only fueled Marcus's resolve. He understood that change wouldn't come easily, especially when it challenged deeply ingrained attitudes. One afternoon, Marcus received a call from Rachel Monroe, the journalist who had helped expose Dawson's actions. She sounded excited as she explained her latest findings. "I've been digging deeper into the department's records," she said, "and guess what? There's a pattern here. Multiple complaints have been filed against Dawson over the years, all swept under the rug. It's like they didn't even investigate." Rachel shared copies of the documents with Marcus, highlighting cases where Dawson had allegedly used excessive force or shown blatant disrespect toward disabled individuals. One report described how he mocked a deaf man for using sign language during a traffic stop. Another detailed how he refused to provide accommodations for a blind woman trying to file a complaint. "This is gold," Marcus said, flipping through the pages. "We can use this to prove he's part of a larger problem, not just a bad apple." With this new evidence in hand, Marcus met with federal investigators to ensure it was included in their case. The agents nodded gravely as they reviewed the materials, promising to follow up on every lead. Meanwhile, Rachel published another article exposing the department's history of ignoring complaints. The piece reignited public outrage, putting additional pressure on local officials to act. Dawson, feeling increasingly cornered, lashed out publicly. During a heated interview on a late-night talk show, he accused Marcus of orchestrating a smear campaign. "This isn't about justice," Dawson sneered. "It's about revenge. Marcus thinks he's untouchable because he works for the FBI. But let me tell you something, he's no saint. Look at how he raises his daughter. Maybe if he taught her to follow the rules, none of this would have happened." The comments sparked immediate backlash. Viewers flooded social media with messages of support for Maya, calling Dawson's remarks cruel and unfounded. Disability rights advocates condemned his attempt to shift blame onto a teenage girl. Even some of his defenders distanced themselves, realizing his words had crossed a line. For Marcus, Dawson's attack hit close to home. Sitting alone in his living room after watching the interview, he replayed the accusations in his mind. Was he failing as a father? Had he pushed Maya too hard by encouraging her to speak out? Doubts crept in, but then he remembered Maya's resilience, the way she faced adversity with grace and courage. No matter what Dawson said, Marcus knew he was doing the right thing. The next morning, Marcus sat down with Maya to discuss the interview. She listened quietly, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she looked up at him and asked, "Do you think people will believe him?" "No," Marcus replied firmly, "because we have the truth on our side, and the truth is stronger than any lie." Maya nodded slowly, though uncertainty lingered in her eyes. "I just want it to be over," she admitted softly. "So do I, sweetheart," Marcus said, pulling her into a hug. "But sometimes, ending something bad means starting something good. That's what we're doing here. We're building a better future." As the weeks passed, the investigation uncovered even more damning information. Federal agents discovered that Dawson wasn't the only officer with a troubling track record. Several high-ranking officials in the department had turned a blind eye to misconduct, prioritizing loyalty over accountability. Emails revealed attempts to suppress complaints, alter reports, and protect favored officers. The scope of the corruption shocked even seasoned investigators. With the evidence mounting, federal authorities decided to expand their probe beyond Dawson. They announced plans to audit the entire department, examining everything from hiring practices to disciplinary procedures. Local officials scrambled to respond, issuing statements promising cooperation while privately fearing the fallout. In the midst of all this, Maya continued to heal. Physical therapy sessions helped ease the pain in her arm, while counseling provided an outlet for her emotions. Art became her sanctuary once again, allowing her to express feelings words couldn't capture. One evening, as she painted a vibrant sunset, Marcus joined her in the living room. "That's beautiful," he said, admiring her work. "It's how I feel inside," Maya replied with a small smile. "Like things are finally getting brighter." Marcus nodded, touched by her optimism. Despite everything she'd endured, she still found hope in the smallest moments. It reminded him why he kept fighting, not just for justice, but for a world where kindness triumphed over cruelty. Finally, the day came when federal agents presented their findings to the public. In a packed courtroom, they outlined the extent of the corruption within the police department. They highlighted Dawson's repeated abuses of power, as well as the systemic failures that enabled such behavior to persist. As cameras rolled and reporters scribbled notes, the weight of the evidence left little room for denial. Dawson sat stoically beside his attorney, his face pale with apprehension. For the first time, he seemed aware of the gravity of his situation. When asked to respond, he offered a weak apology, claiming he never intended to hurt anyone. Few believed him. Following the presentation, federal authorities announced charges against Dawson and several other officers implicated in the scandal. Additionally, they called for sweeping reforms to address the root causes of the misconduct. Training programs would be revamped, accountability measures strengthened, and independent oversight bodies established. The announcement drew cheers from advocacy groups and community members alike. Many hailed it as a turning point, a moment when justice prevailed over injustice. For Marcus and Maya, it marked the culmination of months of hard work and sacrifice. That evening, as they sat together watching the news coverage, Maya turned to her father with tears in her eyes. "Do you think this will actually make a difference?" she asked. "I do," Marcus replied, his voice filled with conviction. "It won't fix everything overnight, but it's a start. And sometimes, that's all we need, a chance to begin again." Maya smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. Though scars remained, both visible and invisible, she felt a sense of closure washing over her. The battle had been long and difficult, but it had also brought unexpected blessings, a stronger bond with her father, a renewed sense of purpose, and the knowledge that her voice mattered. As the sun set outside their window, casting a warm glow across the room, Marcus whispered, "You did it, sweetheart. You changed the world." And for the first time in a long time, Maya believed him. But even as they celebrated this victory, Marcus knew the journey wasn't over. The road ahead would require vigilance and perseverance. Change didn't happen overnight, and there would undoubtedly be setbacks along the way. Yet armed with hope and determination, they were ready to face whatever came next, together. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation on the day of Officer Greg Dawson's trial. Reporters jostled for space, cameras clicked incessantly, and whispers filled the air as people waited for proceedings to begin. It was a landmark case, not just for Maya and Marcus, but for the entire community. The outcome would set a precedent, sending a message about accountability, justice, and the need for systemic reform. Marcus arrived early, his suit pressed and tie perfectly knotted. Beside him walked Maya, her steps steady despite the nerves fluttering in her chest. She wore a bright yellow dress, a color she had chosen because it reminded her of sunshine breaking through clouds. Her father noticed the choice and smiled, faintly, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "You look beautiful," he whispered, "and brave." As they took their seats, the room fell silent. Judge Laura Simmons entered, her presence commanding immediate respect. With a firm voice, she instructed everyone to rise. Once seated again, she began by outlining the charges against Dawson: assault, abuse of power, and misconduct while on duty. The stakes were high and the tension in the room was palpable. Dawson sat at the defendant's table, flanked by his attorney. His usual swagger was gone, replaced by a tense, almost defeated demeanor. Across the aisle, Marcus glanced at him briefly before focusing on Maya. This wasn't just about punishing one man, it was about proving that no one was above the law, regardless of their badge or title. The prosecution opened its case by presenting overwhelming evidence, surveillance footage showing Dawson yanking Maya to the ground, medical reports detailing her injuries and witness testimonies describing the officer's aggressive behavior. Each piece painted a damning picture of misconduct. Rachel Monroe, the journalist who had first exposed the incident, testified about the patterns of abuse uncovered during her investigation. Her words carried weight, backed by documents revealing years of ignored complaints against Dawson. But the turning point came when Maya herself took the stand. At first she hesitated, clutching the edge of the witness box. Her hands trembled, slightly, and her voice wavered as she recounted the events leading up to the incident. "I was trying to cross the street," she said softly. "I know it takes me longer because of my walker, but I didn't mean to cause trouble." Her vulnerability struck a chord with everyone in the room. Even hardened reporters lowered their pens momentarily, captivated by her honesty. When asked why she thought Dawson had targeted her, Maya paused, gathering her thoughts. Then, with quiet determination, she replied, "Because I'm different." The courtroom fell silent. Those three simple words carried immense power, resonating deeply with anyone who had ever felt marginalized or dismissed. Judge Simmons nodded solemnly, jotting down notes. Even Dawson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, unable to meet Maya's gaze. During cross-examination, Dawson's attorney tried to undermine Maya's testimony, suggesting she had exaggerated the situation or misinterpreted the officer's intentions. But Marcus had prepared her well. With each question, Maya remained composed, answering truthfully without letting anger creep into her tone. By the time she stepped down from the stand, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Other witnesses followed, including Lisa Carter, the woman who had been mocked by Dawson years earlier for using a wheelchair. Her testimony added another layer to the prosecution's case, highlighting how Dawson's actions weren't isolated incidents but part of a broader pattern of discrimination. Disability rights advocates also spoke, emphasizing the importance of treating all individuals with dignity and respect, regardless of their abilities. Dawson's defense team struggled to counter the mounting evidence. They attempted to portray him as a dedicated officer who had simply made a mistake under pressure. However, their arguments rang hollow in light of the documented history of misconduct. Even Dawson's own testimony failed to sway the jury. When questioned directly by the prosecution, he stumbled over his answers, contradicting statements he had made earlier. By the end of the trial, the verdict seemed inevitable. After hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their decision: guilty on all counts. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom as Judge Simmons sentenced Dawson to prison time, stripped him of his badge, and ordered him to pay restitution to Maya. For Marcus and Maya, the moment was bittersweet. While they were relieved that justice had been served, they couldn't ignore the pain and trauma that had led them here. As they left the courthouse, surrounded by supporters and flashing cameras, Maya clung to her father's arm. "It's over," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. But Marcus knew better. "This is just the beginning," he told her gently. Beyond the trial, while Dawson's conviction marked a significant victory, Marcus understood that true change required more than punishing one individual. The federal investigation had revealed deep-rooted issues within the police department, issues that couldn't be fixed overnight. Corruption, implicit bias, and lack of accountability had festered for years, creating an environment where misconduct thrived unchecked. Working closely with United Voices for Equality, UVE, Marcus pushed for comprehensive reforms. Together, they drafted policies aimed at improving training programs, implementing stricter oversight mechanisms, and fostering better relationships between law enforcement and marginalized communities. Key among these proposals was the establishment of an independent review board, tasked with investigating complaints against officers. Local officials initially resisted, fearing backlash from within the department, but public pressure proved too strong to ignore. Protesters marched through the streets holding signs that read "Justice for All" and "Reform Now." Social media campaigns amplified their voices, keeping the issue in the spotlight. Slowly but surely, lawmakers began to listen. One breakthrough came when Governor Linda Hayes announced statewide measures to address police misconduct. Inspired by Maya's story, she pledged funding for disability awareness training and mandated body cameras for all officers. Her speech drew applause from advocacy groups, though critics warned that implementation would take time and vigilance. Marcus threw himself into ensuring these reforms succeeded. He attended town hall meetings, met with legislators, and collaborated with activists to hold authorities accountable. His efforts earned him recognition as a champion for justice, but he never sought the limelight. For him, this fight was personal, a way to honor Maya's courage and ensure no one else suffered as she had. Meanwhile, Maya continued to heal. Physical therapy helped restore strength to her injured arm, while counseling provided tools to cope with emotional scars. Art remained her refuge, offering solace and self-expression. One evening, as she sketched a portrait of her father, Marcus walked into the room and smiled. "What are you working on?" he asked, leaning over her shoulder. "You," she replied shyly. "I wanted to capture how proud I am of you." Touched, Marcus hugged her tightly. "I should be saying that to you. None of this would have happened without your bravery." Maya shrugged modestly, though pride flickered in her eyes. Over the past months, she had grown stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. Speaking out hadn't been easy, but it had taught her the value of standing up for what was right. A new voice. As the dust settled, Maya found herself thrust into an unexpected role: advocate. Invitations poured in from schools, organizations, and conferences asking her to share her story. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she was ready to relive the trauma publicly. But Marcus encouraged her, reminding her of the impact her words could have. Her first speaking engagement was nerve-wracking. Standing on stage before hundreds of people, Maya gripped the microphone tightly, her heart pounding. "Hi," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "My name is Maya, and I want to talk about something important: kindness." She went on to describe her experience with Dawson, emphasizing not just the injustice but also the lessons she had learned. "Being different isn't a weakness," she concluded. "It's a strength, and we deserve to live in a world where everyone is treated fairly, no matter who they are." When she finished, the audience erupted into applause, rising to their feet in admiration. Maya blushed, overwhelmed by the response. From that day forward, she embraced her role as a voice for change, inspiring others to speak out against discrimination and inequality. Facing the future. Though the battle had been won, Marcus and Maya knew challenges lay ahead. Reforming an entire system wouldn't happen overnight, and resistance would persist. Yet they faced the future with hope, buoyed by the knowledge that they had sparked a movement. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset, Maya turned to her father. "Do you think things will really change?" she asked. "I do," Marcus replied, his voice steady. "Not all at once, but step by step. And every time someone stands up for what's right, we move closer to a better world." Maya nodded, gazing at the horizon streaked with hues of orange and pink. Despite everything she had endured, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The scars would always remain, but so would the strength she had discovered within herself. Together, they watched, as darkness gave way to stars twinkling overhead, a reminder that even in the darkest times light could shine through. Months had passed since the trial, and life in the small Ohio town began to settle into a new rhythm. The scars of the past still lingered, but so did the promise of change. For Maya and Marcus, the journey that had started with pain and injustice now felt like the beginning of something meaningful. They had fought for justice not just for themselves, but for countless others who had been silenced or ignored. And as they looked ahead, they found hope in the possibility of a brighter future. Healing and growth, Maya returned to her daily routine with a renewed sense of purpose. She went back to school where teachers and classmates treated her with newfound respect. Some students even approached her to thank her for speaking out, sharing their own stories of feeling misunderstood or mistreated. Maya listened patiently, offering words of encouragement whenever she could. Art continued to be her sanctuary. Her sketches and paintings became bolder, filled with vibrant colors and themes of resilience. One piece, a large canvas depicting a tree growing through cracks in concrete, caught the attention of her art teacher. "This is incredible," the teacher said, her eyes glistening. "It tells such a powerful story." Encouraged by the feedback, Maya decided to enter the painting in a local art competition. To her surprise, it won first place. When she accepted the award on stage, she spoke briefly about how art had helped her heal. "Sometimes, when words aren't enough, creativity can speak for us," she said. The audience applauded, moved by her sincerity. At home, Marcus watched his daughter blossom with pride. He knew the road to recovery hadn't been easy. There were nights when Maya woke up crying, haunted by memories of the incident. But she faced each challenge with courage. Therapy sessions and support groups had played a crucial role in her healing process, teaching her coping strategies and helping her rebuild confidence. Marcus often joined her at these sessions, listening intently as she shared her thoughts and feelings. Their bond grew stronger with every passing day. Though Maya still carried emotional scars, she no longer let them define her. Instead, she used her experiences to inspire others, becoming a beacon of hope for those struggling to find their voice. Building a legacy. While Maya focused on personal growth, Marcus dedicated himself to systemic reform. The federal investigation into the police department had uncovered widespread corruption, implicating several high-ranking officials alongside Dawson. As a result, sweeping changes were implemented. Mandatory sensitivity training, stricter accountability measures, and the establishment of an independent oversight board. Marcus worked tirelessly to ensure these reforms took root. He collaborated with advocacy groups, attended community meetings, and met regularly with lawmakers to monitor progress. His efforts earned him national recognition, with news outlets dubbing him a champion for justice. Yet Marcus remained humble, deflecting praise onto Maya and the countless individuals who had stood with them. One milestone came when Governor Linda Hayes signed the statewide Disability Awareness Bill into law. Inspired by Maya's story, the legislation mandated comprehensive training programs for law enforcement officers and allocated funding for community outreach initiatives. During the signing ceremony, Governor Hayes invited Maya to join her on stage. "This young woman has shown us all what true courage looks like," the governor said, gesturing toward Maya. "Her bravery has sparked a movement, one that will leave a lasting impact on our state and beyond." Tears welled up in Maya's eyes as the crowd erupted into applause. She stepped forward to say a few words, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I never wanted any of this to happen," she admitted. "But if it means making the world a little kinder, then I'm glad we didn't give up." Her speech resonated deeply, drawing praise from advocates and critics alike. It was clear that Maya had become more than just a symbol of resilience. She was a catalyst for change. Facing challenges. Despite the progress, resistance persisted. Some officers grumbled about the new policies, claiming they were unnecessary or overly restrictive. Others openly defied reforms, testing the limits of accountability. Marcus understood that changing deeply ingrained attitudes wouldn't happen overnight. It would require patience, persistence, and unwavering commitment. To address these challenges, Marcus partnered with UVE, United Voices for Equality, to launch educational campaigns targeting both law enforcement and the general public. Workshops focused on fostering empathy, promoting inclusivity, and dismantling stereotypes. Role-playing exercises allowed participants to step into someone else's shoes, helping them understand the struggles faced by marginalized communities. These efforts yielded mixed results. While many embraced the initiatives, others remained skeptical. But Marcus refused to lose heart. Every success, no matter how small, brought them closer to their goal. One breakthrough came during a workshop led by Maya herself. Standing before a group of rookie officers, she recounted her experience with Dawson, emphasizing the importance of compassion and understanding. "When you see someone different from you," she said, "don't judge them. Ask yourself how you can help instead." Her message struck a chord. Several officers approached her afterward, thanking her for sharing her perspective. One even confessed that he had previously dismissed calls for reform, but now saw their value. "You've changed my mind," he admitted. Moments like these reminded Marcus why they kept fighting. Change wasn't always immediate, but it was possible, and worth pursuing. Looking ahead. As time went on, Maya and Marcus began to envision a future beyond the fight for justice. They dreamed of a world where everyone was treated with dignity and respect regardless of their abilities or differences. For Maya, that meant continuing to use her voice to advocate for others. She traveled to schools, conferences, and community events, inspiring audiences with her story. Her message evolved over time, focusing not just on overcoming adversity, but also on embracing individuality. "Being different isn't something to hide," she told one crowd. "It's something to celebrate. We all have unique gifts to offer, if only people are willing to listen." For Marcus, the future meant ensuring that reforms endured. He worked closely with federal agencies to develop long-term strategies for monitoring and improving law enforcement practices. His dedication earned him promotions within the FBI, placing him in a position to influence policy on a national scale. Yet, despite their achievements, neither Maya nor Marcus forgot where they had started. On quiet evenings, they often sat together on the porch, reminiscing about the journey they had undertaken. "Do you think people will remember me?" Maya asked one night, staring at the stars above. "They already do," Marcus replied, smiling warmly. "You've left a mark on the world, sweetheart. A good one." Maya nodded, content with his answer. She didn't need fame or accolades. Knowing she had made a difference was enough. A brighter. Tomorrow, years later, the town where it all began transformed into a model of inclusivity and fairness. Police officers underwent rigorous training, learning to approach every situation with empathy and respect. Community relations improved dramatically, thanks in part to programs designed to bridge gaps between law enforcement and residents. Maya grew into a confident young woman, using her platform to champion causes close to her heart. Her artwork gained international acclaim, with pieces displayed in galleries around the world. Each creation carried a message of hope, reminding viewers of the power of resilience and unity. Marcus continued his work with the FBI, mentoring younger agents and advocating for systemic change. Together, father and daughter inspired countless others to stand up against injustice, proving that even the smallest voices could spark monumental shifts. As the sun set on another day, casting golden hues across the horizon, Maya and Marcus walked hand in hand through the park. The same park where Maya had once fallen, hurt and humiliated, now symbolized triumph and renewal. "We've come a long way," Marcus said, glancing at his daughter. "We sure have," Maya agreed, smiling brightly. And though challenges lay ahead, they faced them side by side, ready to embrace whatever the future held, united by love, courage, and the belief that kindness could conquer cruelty. Above them, the sky darkened, revealing a tapestry of stars twinkling softly. A reminder that even in the darkest times light could shine through,